Well, hello, that's me again. Today is August 5th. It's actually Saturday, and I decided to give you some updates for this weekend. And I will start with what is extremely important. And I often get on my discussion boards under my videos that some trolls, so probably Zip saw some whatever Western trolls, they go and like, oh, you're ranting all this, about how this and that is bad and why nobody knows, but you only one who knows everything, which I don't, and of course I never pretended to know everything, but yeah, that's what trolls do, either them being paid or not. But I want to point out to the blog of my friend Larry Johnson and the article, which is a must read, because this article talks about what, as you can see yourself, why is the West so weak and Russia so strong, the role of human capital and Western education. Guys Baltar wrote this article, and it's a fairly long read. I mean, not necessarily too bad, but it is a crucial read because, first, it suddenly turns out that I'm not only alone who is pointing this out, but there are other people in the United States who really begin to think about it and thought about it all the time. It's more than just about the loss of the meritocracy, which it's not even loss. Meritocracy have been killed in the United States, in the West. But here it is. This is what he writes. Predictions and projections didn't pan out, and the West doesn't seem to know what to do. The Russian economy wasn't a house of cards as predicted, Russian weapons weren't inferior as predicted, Russian soldiers and commanders weren't incompetent as predicted, and Russian technology wasn't inferior as predicted. In some respects, Russians even seem to be superior to the West. Well, I know in what fields they are. I'm not saying that I know all those fields, but certainly in terms of military, me being a former cadre officer and military professional, I can talk about. And I strongly suggest people to read this article before actually going and referring themselves to what I will be referring to in this video. And we will start with this white elephant. And I want to first address the issue of the losses. This is what many people still do not understand. And I provide them data, and I provide them with some numbers, official numbers, and they still do not recognize that assessments and Russian Ministry of Defense, which I am on the record, does the count extremely conservatively. And here it is, yesterday. First, I want to thank the person, whoever you are. I know that I followed your lead basically, and I'm using now the Microsoft Edge, the browser, and indeed it has this wonderful function of the translation of the articles into English in this particular case. And of course, while the translation itself is not necessarily very sophisticated, it definitely does the job. And here it is. Here's the Russian media now translated for you automatically by Edge. I'm not advertising Edge. And here is the issue of the losses as they are explained by Russian Ministry of Defense, and yesterday as reported by Vzгляд and RIA and all major Russian outlets. It is, as you can see yourself, yesterday news, and look what it is. The Ministry of Defense called the losses of the armed forces of Ukraine since the beginning of the counter-offensive. So, more than 43,000 soldiers, KIAs, we're talking about KIAs, since the beginning of the counter-offensive, the Russian Defense Ministry said. These are catastrophic losses for Ukraine, and we'll talk about it later. But look what is highlighted and underlined for you. It is clarified, Ministry of Defense, that these figures do not include the wounded and foreign mercenaries evacuated to the hospitals in Ukraine and abroad, as well as the military destroyed in the rear areas, the Ministry Telegram channel says. Read attentively. Does not count the military destroyed in the rear areas. What does it mean? And this has everything to do with the modern warfare of the 21st century, and especially with Russia using overwhelming number of the high precision and standoff weaponry. And here's the trick. Well, Russia probably kills more or about the same number of the servicemen of the armed forces of Ukraine in the rear as it does on the front line. And here's the issue. Russian Minister of Defense actually counts only those things corpses which it can visually identify on the battlefield, including in the lull when Russians also allow their VSU to take out those corpses and they're wounded, which many of them are actually not saved. And then we do have this other issue of how many of them die during the medical evacuation into the rear. And when you look at this, and again, do not forget, there are tactical rears, the operational rears, and strategic rears, of course. And Russia reaches all of them without exception, both strategic, like the Lvov Combined Arms Academy, where 8 calibers visited it recently, and it allegedly housed 800 servicemen, personnel, so you can imagine what happened. Russians don't count those, but everybody knows that Lvov was describing it as like absolutely, the mayhem with the huge number of the ambulances rushing towards this academy after 8 caliber cruise missiles visited it. So how many killed there? Who knows? 100, 200, 400, all 800? Who knows? So Russians don't even count this. And then, of course, we go now, if you don't believe me or you don't believe this basic method, basic bottom line type accounts, here is the man who actually everybody believes nowadays, and there is a good reason why they believe him. And here it is Mr. Douglas MacGregor speaking yesterday to Jason Hinkle, and he specifically stated that Russia has eliminated 400 soldiers of the VSU thus far, and he talks about this both. He mentions the fact that he received some degree of the intelligence brief, and of course that he also has this data on the newly discovered 123,000 new graves in the last few months. So, and these are obviously not the people who died from alcoholism. And when you look at this, so we look at this order of magnitude of the KIAs, so you can multiply it roughly by 2, by 3, and you begin to get the scale of the catastrophe and why, for example, when you look at this, it's again the losses of the armed forces of Ukraine just today, which is August 5, 890 killed. These are killed guys. So 2 tanks, 15 vehicles, 22 artillery pieces, and butcher's bill for August already is 4,080. And this is again, these are frontline reports. Russia doesn't report what they cannot count, but we know that the mayhem on the rears, especially tactical rear, which is essentially basically up to 30-40 kilometers. When you look at the brigade type core level, so many people died there too, because the artillery has this range and it wreaks mayhem on those depots, all those prepositioned troops and things of this nature. So, and you can make your own conclusions on that. But evidently, despite this all rhetoric from the West, and despite the fact that now Ukraine attacks actually peaceful tankers, as you can see yourself, that actually it's today, the footage from a tanker, it's a Sikh tanker, that's how it's called. It's not huge tanker, basically. It's about 6,000 tons of displacement. It's the River Sea type vessel, and it was attacked by something around 30 nautical miles from the Kerch Strait. It was on the anchor, and it was attacked by unmanned vehicles, those sea drones, and it had the machine compartment flooded, but evidently 11 people still are alive there, and I know there have been tugs now. The vessel is going to be all right, and most importantly, the crew is fine. So But now, of course, we need to know about this situation with the Russian Rapusha class Project 775 amphibious landing ship, which was attacked in near Novorossiysk base. It was attacked. It's now in the dock. It will be just fixed and repaired and will be going back to the service. But of course, we may say here that with certain degree of certainty, so to speak, that the commanding corps of the ship, the commanding officer and officers of the ship will be removed. They made a horrendous thing of not carrying out the what is called external outside watch and not having, I don't know if they had this Rubka, which is MR255 Topaz radar, which is more than enough to observe the surface area, and which would be able to detect those drones, or rather one drone, which would allow to either go and use the standard artillery, which is 57 millimeter, 2 cannons on this type of the ships. And that's Novorossiysk. It wasn't really subjected to any kind of attacks before, but obviously they repelled most of it except for one drone. And here we have to go back and remember this wonderful thing. As you can see yourself, this is what is called Grisha class anti-submarine warfare ship. And Sevastopol, which is basically repelling those attacks, I mean, daily basis almost, so they have this wonderful 68th Brigade, which has 2 subdivisions. They have 400 subdivision, which consists of this type of the anti-submarine warfare ships, and the minesweepers, I mean mine hunting ships. So they represent what is called the Brigade of Over, or Defense of the Water region, and it is one of those very ungrateful, unglamorous jobs when you begin to defend the water region around the naval bases. It's pretty far out, but still it's not far from the shore in general sense for ocean-going people. However, those wonderful Grishas which protect now the Sevastopol naval base, as you can see yourself, they are also pretty advanced for their type. It's almost 1,000 tons of displacement. It has the ASA anti-air defense complex. You don't see it here. It has the jet bombs, and you have like fairly serious artillery, 76 and 30 millimeter guns, and it has a very decent Topaz B2, I believe, MR755 radar, and a bunch of other radar, which allows it to control basically the area quite far away from itself. And of course it has a very decent 2 sonars, and so these ships are very active now, and suddenly, what was a glamorous job, suddenly these guys see a lot of combat, repelling all those drones, which Ukraine, under the guide of its English or British, if you wish, advisors, conducts constantly, and it will conduct it. That's the only way it can present some kind of the successes, as they say, because primarily it's PR, and it's all about picture. Well, in reality, you saw the numbers of the losses are horrendous. But if that wasn't bad enough, and when you begin to look at this whole situation with the operation, a special military operation, you suddenly get also this type of the admissions. And again, it was yesterday, and this is by one of the Ukrainian generals, Major General Krivonos. And he said that Russian troops, if desired, can reach Kiev in 12 hours. And he said the Ukrainian authorities underestimate the power of the Russian army, which can lead to serious consequences. And military experts, including me, warned that they were able to reach Kiev in 12 hours. Well, and that's the point which we need to discuss. And this is actually why we have the issue of Mr. McGregor talking about it. I have this article from Larry's web blog, wonderful article about incompetence. Yesterday, Scott Ritter, my friend, also, he just exploded when even responding to the absolute crap which Mr. Petrev speaks about, evidently not understanding what is happening around him. And he lies, but he lies also not only because of the malice, which he does lie because of the malice, because he needs to support the propaganda narrative, but because, yeah, he is not that educated, I guess, he doesn't understand what is happening because he has no reference points, he has no experience with dealing something like Russian armed forces, which he doesn't. And so when you look at this, it coalesces in this, what is called white thread throughout all my podcasts and my videos, that we have to look attentively at what is happening, why those people bring things to this state where everything falls apart. It doesn't fall apart in Russia. It's actually quite opposite, but it falls apart in the West, and it falls apart so badly that I cannot even express it in one video or even 10 videos. And here is to demonstrate to you. And we have this, again, thanks to my people who basically prompted me about the translation by the, in this particular case, the Edge, Microsoft Edge. Here it is. Yesterday, or 2 days ago, Die Welt, major German outlet, and look what they say. And they say that despite big promises, Germany continues to hesitate on arms deliveries. That's a pretty important headline, if you pardon my French. And as you can see yourself, Scholz, I mean, the guy is pathetic. I mean, this is really, I'm sorry, German people, you wanted it, you have to live with the consequences of that. But they still actually explain that, yeah, Germany kind of drags its feet, doesn't want to deliver what it promised, despite the fact that Germany is probably now the second largest supplier and supporter of Ukraine. And here they provide the table, as you can see yourself. And versprochen, or sprechen, I guess, in German, which is in black, as you can see yourself, means what was promised. And this is geliefert, this is what have been really transferred in green. And you begin to look at this Welt's article, which also have been obtained from Bundeswehr, and you begin to see that for some reason Germany doesn't want to fight anymore. And as you can see yourself, they offered Leopard 1s, promised 110, 10 have been delivered. I don't know how many of them left there. They will be all annihilated. You have those Marders, the armored personnel carrier, or whatever, 20 promised, 0 delivered. They deliver some Gepards, which have been annihilated. They, in terms of Iris air defense complexes, promised 4, 2, none of 12, none of them have been delivered. So, and you begin to look at this like, you know what? Why do they do this? And the question is very simple. And this is what we basically have to go back to the article I mentioned about Larry, about competence, about the human capital. And this is explanation. Germany was supposed to go and fight Russians there. That's how Pentagon and Washington conceived it. And basically, some of them, they knew that basically all of this German hardware will be humiliatingly annihilated. It is being annihilated, and guess what? Suddenly Rheinmetall and all those, Leopard producing firms and, especially when you look at this situation with the basically economic implosion of Germany, they have their reputation ruined, my friends. I mean, German weaponry turned out to be garbage, basically. The same goes to the American weaponry, because obviously after the Germany have been discredited, the United States has the last 2 types of the weapons, which are from different services, of course. These are Leopard Abrams tanks and F-16 or whatever other planes they want to deliver. They talk about it much, but they know if they deliver them, they will go in flames the same way as any other equipment went. And that is why, for example, you don't see Challenger tanks. You're not going to see Challenger tanks on the front lines, because British are very hesitant. They don't want to be humiliated. And when you look throughout this, and I already mentioned to you Judge Napolitano and Alistair Crook speaking about it a few days ago, and Judge Napolitano asked Mr. Crook a very straightforward question, and the question was, did the American military myth have been destroyed? And yeah, Alistair Crook stated what I was writing about for years. Yes, it has been completely annihilated. And now you have this kind of, bunch of scorpions in this can of the combined West or NATO, and everybody tries to figure out who will sell something to anyone. Obviously, United States wants to reindustrialize. It's not going to happen as they planned it. But guess what? Now they have the case. People from the American military-industrial complex, they have the case, go to the Germans, to Scholz, go to Rheinmetall and state and show all those photographs and show all how it was all destroyed, and say, you know what, guys, you don't know how to produce tanks. We do. Look at us. None of our tanks have been destroyed, which is true because they didn't deliver any Abrams. Obviously, we're not talking about Bradleys, which have been completely blown out of the water, basically, and the catastrophic losses of the American armor in this respect. But they can say that, yeah, you don't know how the tanks are done. We do. Let us resume the production of Abrams or whatever the new version, and you buy it from us. And if you do not buy it from us, we're going to screw you over big time. And guess what? This is what's going to happen. The same as it happened with F-35s. Another matter that there are many people having a second thoughts, if not the third or fourth thoughts about U.S. Patriot PAC-3 air defense and in the American air defense in general. So that is why the United States is hesitant to basically provide fighters and obviously tanks. Will they appear theoretically at some point of time? Hey, Russia say, let them appear, see what happens. And this is what the whole kind of main thread of this conversation today is, that people there are so incompetent, including in Pentagon now. We can say this with the conviction. They still, some of them don't understand what they are dealing with. So it doesn't matter what you supply. I mean, you can supply F-16, you can supply F-35, you can supply F-22. They're not going to fly far. And let alone something like Mr. Petraeus, why Scott Ritter went ballistic. And I applaud Scott for that. I mean, it's a wonderful human position, but it's also a position of a professional. When Mr. Petraeus talked about B-52s, the guy is definitely living in alternative universe, and he never heard about S-400. In fact, many people still forget, Russia has a world-class air force, which provides an outstanding operational tempo, and the best fighter pilots now in the Russian Air Force, which basically annihilated whatever the Air Force of Armed Forces of Ukraine have been there. So when you look at this, it's like, yeah, now Germany is dragging its feet because it doesn't want to be humiliated anymore. It's already have been humiliated enough. And that also kind of goes together with what we have been talking about, the issue of incompetence, issue of the absolute misunderstanding of what Russians are, what Russia is as a state, how Russians view war, how they approach it, and how they fight. They will try to learn, as I already stated. They are learning, but I don't think so. You can apply many lessons from that to the organization and the way American and NATO militaries are designed. They are not designed for the serious war. They are good for expeditionary warfare and fighting third-rate armies. And that was kind of the main thrust of my conversation today. But to demonstrate to you what it brings to Russia, here it is. Russians again report on the new system which is developed and being implemented of the shortwave communications. Alliance have been developed for the Russian troops, which will make it possible to load flight missions into mobile missile systems for various purposes much faster due to the increased volume of data transmission per unit of time. This will speed up the response of troops to the action of the enemy and will allow more quickly to strike at unidentified targets. And I've been talking about it. Colonel McGregor have been talking about it. Larry Johnson have been talking about it. Scott Ritter have been talking about it. Now, many people with the military background have been talking about it. And the question is now the reaction time. This new shortwave system provides now the up to, I believe, 75 kilobits per second, which is enough to load up within the net-centric basically capability which Russia exercises to a dramatic effect. It's a much faster upload of the flight missions, or полетное задание, as it means, for example, to such complexes as Iskander or Tornado, and there you go. After that, well, you know what's going to happen. The reaction time increases, and that is why even Ukrainians report now that you cannot even escape it anymore. You shoot something at Russians, it flies back immediately, some kind of the projectile, be that missile, artillery response, and of course you also have the constant barraging of those marauding, so to speak, the Ka-52s, Mi-28s, Mi-35s, and all those kind of things, and not to speak about of the frontline aviation, which is of course represented by Su-25s as Su-24. And then of course you have the higher level of the higher echelon of where you have those Su-30, Su-35s, MiG-31 BMs, you know, Su-57s, all networked, all completely tied between each other in the tight, basically net-centric, network basically. And so, yeah, I don't know how you can continue to fight it, especially when you consider the level of casualties, which is by all basically definitions, but from any point of view, from any angle, war crimes. People who command armed forces of Ukraine and people who encourage them to do what they are doing, they are war criminals, because basically they created the slaughter. And I am on record, I spoke about it in my interview with Anya, and you can look it up on the YouTube. You cannot escape this anymore. This is not Iraq, guys. You have more than a million, much more than a million. Some people now go and say up to 2 million. I don't quote me on that, but there is the 2 million casualties altogether, and we have the complete destruction of a country. This would work if you would be dealing with Iraq. This is not going to work with Russia, and there are reasons for that. And those people begin to understand what is happening. That is why you see, and you can feel it, a dramatic change of rhetoric in the US media and even British media. But I read my lips. Many of those people in those media, I'm not talking about decision makers, many of them are people who have no consciousness, they have no morals, they have no ethics, and they are freaking psychopaths. But many of those people in those media are war criminals, or people who actually cooperated with the creating the largest war of the 21st century and the catastrophe in the middle of Europe. Their names are known, and believe me, they will be charged. And that I'm talking about those people from Goebbelsonian US media, such as the New York Times, Wall Street Journal, whatever the neocon rags are. And that gets you kind of to the point of view that know what, yeah, the war is won. Everybody who has any degree of understanding, they know this. Well, Russia won it a long time ago, and right now Russia just expects to kind of finish off whatever is left there in Ukraine, and then to decide what she wants to do in terms of what territories she wants to get, because obviously nobody in Russia now, there is no this narrative about brotherly people anymore. Nobody wants those people around Kiev, let alone Western Ukraine, to be attached to Russia in any way, culturally, socially, economically. So it is clear that all four oblasts of the Donbass will be liberated, and it's already happening. Russia is on the offensive and advancing many kilometers, actually. So that is why there is a kind of, you know, this doom and gloom mood in the media. But the question now is, will Russia get Kharkov or will Russia get Odessa? And so who knows? We'll see. We'll have to wait and see. And this is what I wanted to tell you today, and I thought this commentary was absolutely needed. And this is weekend, you know what? Have a nice weekend, guys. And those who like what I do, pardon me, please subscribe to my channel. And those who can afford, please buy me a coffee or two, or support me on the Patreon. So have a nice weekend, guys, and I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.